you see these things in movies and on TV. I was just like, what's going to happen? And truly within 30 seconds, the entire thing was in flames. And it didn't explode, but it did burst into flames. It was wild. We literally just stood there being like, what is going on?
Hidden safety concerns. Are some automobile manufacturers covering things up?
Let's jump into the interview, folks.
So we have a couple special guests with us today, Orson, Joseph, and Alex Krupp. And the reason they're with us today is they both at one time, I don't know if you still do, but at one time you owned a Volvo, and literally they went up in smoke. Orson, can you explain to folks out there what happened to you?
I mean, it just started I got in the car, picked my son up, and we started driving. And as we hit the highway, the car starts to. Well, first there was this odor. It's New York City, and you're on the New York City highway. That could be coming from any place. There was a delayed acceleration and a jerk, and then it would start, running normal, and then, it would do it again. We get off the highway, started driving up to his basketball practice, put the windows down, still smell that odor. And then that's when I kind of thought, oh, it might be us. As we parked the car, I remember this kid on the block who was going to basketball practice also. He's like, Dad, what is that smell? That's horrible. Right? And I realized it was us. I didn't want to say anything. So I took my son in, I laced him up, went back out, and I started the car back up. And that's when the check engine light came on. So there wasn't any warning at all prior to this. I went, lift the hood up to see what was going on. I see a little bit of steam and decided, let me, check, see if coolant's there. Everything was fine. There was no errors. That little bit of steam then turned into smoke. And then the fire came up. And that's when, panic hits, because it was just a weird situation to be in. And now I'm concerned about other people's car because I'm double parked and there's a car right beside me. I'm like, so luckily we're in the Gowanus industrial area. So I'm like, I started running around, going to some of the businesses around there, trying to get a fire extinguisher to put this out. Call 911, go to the storage place, gave them my phone, so they could give the address and tell the fire truck where to come, borrow their fire extinguisher, went out. When I got back out, there were a couple of neighbors with their fire extinguisher trying to put the fire out. Maybe about 5 minutes after that, the fire engine came. And in that moment, it's, just getting the fire out was the priority.
Okay, so Alex, you experienced your car catching on fire. That does not sound fun by any stretch of the imagination. What happened? We heard Orson sigh. What was your experience like?
I was driving a 2022 Volvo XC90, and we were obsessed with it. And I was telling everybody I knew how much I love the Volvo and that they should get a Volvo, and it's the family car and it's so safe and all of these things. Then lo and behold, in April, my husband and I were driving on the Bruckner Expressway on our way to see a Bruce Springsteen concert at Mohegan Sun. It was going to be a nice little night, just the two of us. We had been driving at that point for maybe 30, 40 minutes. All of a sudden, we started to smell smoke. And sort of as Orson said, it's New York City. We were next to a big truck, and we actually said ooh, that's a terrible smell. Let's get away from that truck. So I think we kind of moved a few lanes over, realized probably maybe 15 seconds later, we saw smoke coming out of our hood. And that's when we realized oh, wait a second, it's us. But maybe 20 seconds after that, the car started, the smoke started billowing. And that's when we realized that we weren't going to make it to an exit. We pulled over as quickly as we could, literally ran 30 feet back because I also didn't know if it was going to explode. I just, you see these things in movies and on TV. I was just like, what's going to happen? And truly within 30 seconds, the entire thing was in flames. And it didn't explode, but it did burst into flames. And it did a little some sort of snap, crackle, pop, campfire type sounds, huge flames, huge smoke. And we just stood there in complete disbelief. We called 911. They sent the fire department, but it took them maybe 15 minutes to arrive. Wow. it was wild. We literally just stood there being like, what is going on?
So then let me ask you a question to follow up, Alex. What happened afterwards? Like, you contacted Volvo, and like, what did they tell you? And then Orson, we're going to want to hear what your experience was too. But Alex, like, what happened here?
I waited until I could like breathe again, sort of. I mean, it took me there was a lot of adrenaline. I mean, it was really like a fight or flight situation. It was also hard to figure out who to get in touch with. We called the dealership and they were like, nope, not us. Sorry, not our fault. We were like, but you sold us this car. They were like, well, call Volvo USA, but they didn't give us a number. We had to do a lot of Google. It was truly a rabbit hole with like who to contact. Finally, and in the meantime, I also was reporting to the NHSTA, NHSTA.
National Highway Safety Transit Administration.
Yes, exactly. And then I finally got the right person at Volvo, or the right number to call at Volvo. Initially, they were super responsive, like, oh my God, so sorry this happened to you. We will like look into it and see. So we were running like two parallel sort of investigations, right? Like one through insurance and one through Volvo. Insurance was much faster to respond. They sent their inspector pretty much right away, within days. The report said that the car was too damaged to be able to tell what had happened and what had caused the fire. There was some kind of leak in the fuel line, is what they determined, but that it was too charred, too destroyed to tell what had caused that. And so they deemed it a total loss. They paid us for the fair market value at that point, which was wonderful, but I felt, first of all, the fair market value that we were paid back was not enough to actually get the same car. We had quite low mileage. We had under maybe about 12,000 miles. I think it was about 12,000 miles. We'd been in the car for more than 2 years. So it was it was a great car. It was in great shape. And so I expected that Volvo would just make us whole, which would have been $8,000 to $10,000 by our calculations. And that conversation was starting to take place, and they didn't send their inspector. It took a long time. More than 30 days after the incident, they sent someone. The car, mind you, has been sitting in a junkyard for this entire time. So for more than 30 days, we get a response saying that Volvo's inspector found like evidence of rodent damage. And that was it. And so they were like, sorry, can't take responsibility. Like, too bad. I just couldn't reconcile that with what my third-party insurance, insurance had sent a third-party inspector who was like, no, this thing is like a piece of junk. We can't tell anything about what happened. It was so burnt. I couldn't reconcile that with, oh, sorry, we found evidence of rodent damage. And I was like, well, what? Like, what did you find? Like, what, can you show me pictures? Can I see a report? I want to understand the evidence, because to me, it also just like, I know that rats cause damage to cars. I know many people that has happened to, and typically when that happens, the check engine light comes on or the car just doesn't even start. That's, I feel like, typically what you hear. And so I just wanted to understand it. I was like, make it make sense to me so that I can like have closure and move on. And they just they wouldn't. They were like, well, we trust our inspector more than we trust yours. Like, literally, those were the things they would say to me. Or like, your report wasn't as thorough as our report, but they wouldn't send me their report.
Orson, did you have a similar type of situation?
Yeah, for me, call AAA. First call Volvo. Ended up with someone in Sweden. Sounded like a Swedish accent. He was like, I'm like, hey, this is right now I have this car that's burnt. I can't drive it. And I have to tow it someplace. Where should I put it? Where should I tow it? So he said, tow it to the dealership. Let us know what they have to say. And if you don't like what they have to say, we'll help you out. So at that point, I was like, oh, that's good. Then my insurance company, they went, checked it out at the dealership, and they were great throughout all this also. He called me up, and we're on vacation in Belize, and he called me up. He's like, this is what we're going to give you guys, but Volvo wants to charge you $2,000 for storage, right? I'm like, wait, $2,000 for storage? I called Volvo USA up, and they told me to tow the car, to put the car here. He was able to get it down to $1,000, right? Yeah.
How long was the car there? Just out of curiosity.
No, it wasn't there for long at all. Then I started dealing with Volvo, about getting the car looked at. It was a dual inspection. And my car, you could inspect it, and you could see where the fire started and stuff like that. And the insurance company came back and said there was a failure in cylinder 1. And Volvo came back and said it was rodent. After which I requested the evidence from Volvo, and they sent me the evidence. And it was all it was. It was shrubs on the outskirts of the engine. Like when you park your car close to a tree and leaves fall, they're not in the engine, they're on the outside of the engine. Kind of like when you wash your car, and then after washing your car's all clean, and you see these little, pine cones on the outside, and you just take them up. So that's what their evidence was. And then it went on, and I'm like, no, I mean, this is what these guys said. The insurance company and my mechanic, they said something else. And so then they said, okay, you know what, let's do another dual inspection. And then I took them up on the offer that they closed the case.
Orson, I want to double down. How did you find out that other Volvo owners had a similar experience? And then what did you feel once you connected those dots? Like, obviously, we've heard from Alex, we heard from you. Rodent damage is what Volvo says. Like, how did you figure out other people had similar experiences? How'd you feel?
It was actually my wife who found Alex.
I can shed light on that a little bit if that's helpful. I was really unhappy with how customer service was responding. And I was trying to, like, in any other customer service situation, you can typically escalate to a manager or supervisor of some kind.
Yeah.
And that is like impossible at Volvo. It's like a black box. There's nobody who will talk to you besides the person who's been assigned to your case. I emailed a few different listservs that I'm on asking for if anyone knew executives at Volvo that I could escalate, where I could email and escalate the situation. I didn't say anything about the rats. I heard from Orson's wife, and I heard from one other person actually who was like, oh my God, that's so weird. My Volvo spontaneously caught fire and Volvo blamed rodents. Like, they are the ones who brought up the rat situation. I was like, and that's when I was like, wait a second, this is weird. This is fishy, right? Like, it feels suspicious. So I was like, if I'm finding two people that this happened to, and Volvo's just quick to blame rodents, there's got to be more out there. Like, this has to be some kind of weird cover-up going on. I mean, I'm not like a conspiracy theory person, but like, it's just too weird, no? Like,
it's suspicious, Alex. Not a conspiracy theorist myself, but it's definitely suspicious.
Well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I would suggest to you that big corporations often, in my opinion, come to conclusions that aren't the real conclusions. Because I remember many, many years ago when cigarette companies told me it was good to smoke.
yeah.
And 8 out of 10 doctors recommend Chesterfield. So it's, there are things that corporations do to protect themselves and not necessarily to find the truth.
Well, Alex and Orson, we appreciate you reliving a really, really dreadful, terrifying, scary experience. And I think if it's okay, Dad, this is a call to action to our community. Again, if you've experienced this or you know anyone who's had an experience like this with a Volvo vehicle, share it in the comments down below, share the video. Let's see if we can bring awareness to this story, because if there is more to this than rodent damage causing vehicles to catch on fire, which I think it also doesn't play well for us that all of us said we're not conspiracy theorists before we say we're not. Anyway, none of us are conspiracy theorists, all right? But if there is more to the story here, we want to bring awareness to it and try and get someone at NHTSA involved. So thank you, Alex. Thank you, Orson. We really do appreciate you guys reliving this and sharing it with us in our community.
Hopefully we can get you some resolution to this as well.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.